Hi, my name is Iva Vukusic. I'm a PhD candidate at the History Department of Utrecht University, and I study paramilitaries in the former Yugoslavia in the 1990s. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about today, very briefly, is about the role of history in war crimes trials. I study paramilitaries in the former Yugoslavia, and I use court records and archives every day. Without them, my work would be much, much harder. Now, this talk is going to address mainly three questions. First, what are archives at courts and what's in them? Secondly, why is this important or interesting for historians? And thirdly, how we can access some of that material. Now, if you think about war crimes trials, most of you will have some picture or an idea in your head about what I mean. You might think of the International Military Tribunal in Nuremberg after the Second World War. You might think of the Serbian president Slobodan Milosevic, or more recently Radovan Karadzic, the Bosnian representative or president that were tried in The Hague in the last couple of years. What I think is really important about the role of history in war crimes trials is that war crimes trials both use history, but they also produce it. For example, at the ICTY, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia that I'm focusing on today, since 1993, when it was established by the UN Security Council, 161 persons were indicted. Many were convicted for genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. So these are people that were suspected and then indicted for mass atrocities all throughout the region. Now, when it comes to using history, it's really important to say that war crimes trials without history do not make much sense. Without the context or that history, we don't really understand who are the victims or who are the perpetrators. We don't know anything about their slogans, about their ideologies, about their goals. So history is really important for us to have the basis on which we're going to conduct a trial. They're also important because in war crimes trials as evidence, much of what is admitted are historical records. For example, archives from police and military units or in operations, minutes from assembly meetings, witness statements, death certificates, satellite images, all kinds of material that was collected in investigation. At the ICTY, for example, almost 5,000 witnesses testified, and much of that evidence is available. Now, obviously, not everything is available. There are court records that are confidential, and there is good reasons for that. But the public can and should have an interest and an understanding of what is presented in these trials. In terms of producing history, it is really important to think of the ways in which these war crimes trials give something back in terms of history. The public and how the public knows and understands history and even remembers it is really influenced by war crimes trials. For example, some of the ways in which it produces history are hearing witness statements and just hearing survivors and what they went through during the war, camp detainees, women that were subjected to sexual violence, survivors of the shootings, for example, in Srebrenica. At the ICTY, we have millions and millions of pages of documents, transcripts, and all of that tends to be available in the local languages of the former Yugoslavia, but also in English and French, in a database. The database is called ICTY Court Records and is available online basically for anyone who has an email address. Now, if we think about these archives, this enormous amount of material, this is the best and largest collection that we have that addresses the mass violence in the former Yugoslavia in the entire world. If you're a historian, or maybe want to be a historian, or you're just interested in the region and its recent history, I really invite you to go and check it out and try to browse around a little bit and familiarize yourself with that material. Now, finally, I think it's important to say that in war crimes trials, much of that material is really, really important for researchers, not only for historians. And I think it would be important to invite all the institutions to follow the example of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and release as many records as possible that will enable research. Finally, if you're interested in this topic, I really invite you to read two books. One is by Richard Ashby Wilson and the other by Vladimir Petrovic. Both of them had written really, really insightfully on the topic of archives and war crimes trials. Anyway, thank you very much.